even as a third grader, I remember cutting lawns, things like that. So I think there was something in there the whole time even as a kid that, doing something on my own and controlling my own destiny and taking maybe a bigger risk than other people are willing to take was always kind of something I was comfortable with.
The Industrial Sage Executive Series, sharing the stories behind game-changing executives, their organizations, and insights into today's industry challenges. Well, welcome to today's Industrial Sage Executive Series interview. I am joined by Kirk Knopf, who is the CEO of Caleres in Alpharetta, Georgia. Kirk, thank you so much for joining me today on the Executive Series.
Thanks for having me, Danny. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. We were talking about before a little bit. Hey, it's kind of exciting. You guys are in Alpharetta, Georgia. We're in Alpharetta, Georgia. We're just a couple miles apart, so this is exciting. So for those who are not familiar with Caleres, just give us a little, 30,000-foot view. Who are you guys? What do you guys do?
So we're a supply chain execution software company. As you said, based here in Alpharetta. Happy to be here. We're really enjoying this budding Atlanta tech scene that we're a part of. Relatively new company that's the combination of three kind of legacy businesses that we've acquired and put together to build this supply chain execution platform. So about 200 folks work for Caleres, headquartered here in Alpharetta. We also have offices in Dallas and Oakland, California, and two big development facilities in Sri Lanka and India. So that's kind of our footprint as well.
Excellent. Well, that sounds great. So we're going to, dive into a little bit more about what you guys do, some of the challenges that you guys are solving here in just a little bit. But before we do that, this is the time in the episode where we want to get to know Kirk. We want to get to know you a little bit better. So I'd love to know your story, sort of, your background. How did you get into this space? Like, take me back.
Okay. Well, always been in the supply chain execution space, or supply chain space, really. I started with a large railroad here in North America, in Jacksonville, Florida, straight out of undergrad, on the sales and marketing side.
Okay.
First job in the industry was an inside sales job, actually, calling former railroad customers and asking them why they weren't using the railroad anymore. So that was kind of a baptism by fire, and from there, stayed on with him for about 5 years, and from there I got to know the founder of a small software business here in Atlanta. Moved up to Atlanta to start my career on the software side back in around 2000, and I guess the rest is history from there. We grew that business over time. We sold it into a private equity company in 2007, and then
good timing.
Yeah. Actually, a funny story about that. When we were talking to our private equity sponsors, who were great, by the way, while we were selling the business, we had never had a year-over-year decrease in carloads, because a lot of our software still does. It's involved with rail carriers, and we'd never had a year-over-year decrease. And the first year after they acquired us was our first year ever, which was 2008. Where we saw a decline in year-over-year carload growth. So they kind of gave us a hard time about that, but
I'm sure.
Understood market dynamics.
Yeah.
Anyways, then we acquired 4 companies between 2007 and 2011 to kind of add to the platform, the supply chain software platform, and sold that business to GE Transportation in 2012. And then I stayed on at GE Transportation for about 7 years, 6.5 years, running that software business for GE. And then, so yeah, that's a quick overview of my background. All software and transportation related.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You mentioned so you jumped in, right after college. What did you like? So for undergrad, what were you studying? Was that something that you were saying, hey, I want to get into logistics, or I want to get into sales, or both?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
I think it was more of a sales thing. Kind of as timing would have it. When I first went to college, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I my undergrad's in history, actually. I love
Okay.
history and loved
Oh,
it then.
what's your favorite time
Really,
period?
yeah, really the only subject that I really enjoyed in high school. Anyways, and then quickly figured out that's not what I wanted to do. So just graduated with an undergraduate degree in history from Florida State. Actually, that's where my daughter is now too. And while I was in school, I had a job. I had a couple jobs, but one of them was with an insurance agency, Northwestern Mutual, and they were having a big high performance sales kind of push and training and kind of talent development. So my senior year in college went through that whole program, and then at the time CSX was benchmarking their sales processes. So as luck would have it, that looked really well on the resume. No, I had no idea what a railroad was or what a boxcar was or supply chain software for that matter. So no, it wasn't a big aspiration. It's just kind of where I ended up.
Just kind of happened. It's funny, I always love asking that question because it's very interesting how, sort of that journey. Oh, I wanted to do this, but now I'm ended up doing that, and you got sucked in basically. You just got, the tractor beam just pulled you in.
Yeah, well, the entrepreneur side is kind of been the driving force. So like when I was at the railroad, I loved the railroad and got a lot of experience and learned a lot about transportation and technology for that matter with some of the things I was doing. But, I just 5 years was all that was going to be. Just it was kind of had the itch to go off and do something on my own, or a little smaller and a little more kind of in an environment that you could control personally a little bit better. So the corporate world probably wasn't where I was cut out for. Ironically enough, ended up at GE for 7 years.
Yeah.
The entrepreneur side is really what was driving my career path.
So how did you discover that? I mean, was that something that you knew kind of going on, or was it something that just kind of started growing? And you're like, hey, this is kind of interesting, and I like this, and this is as you started, kind of getting involved with these other organizations, these companies.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess that question, it's a good question. I think, as a kid, we were a middle-class family. As I mentioned to you when we were talking earlier, my dad worked for IBM. We moved around a lot. He was really influential in kind of creating work ethic and a lot of the values that I respect and enjoy. But so as part of that, I was always working, even as a kid, not because we needed the money, but just my dad just always taught me that's what you do. You go out and you work. So I always enjoyed like the making money part of it, working with other people part of it. Even as a third grader, I remember cutting lawns, things like that. So I think there was something in there the whole time even as a kid that, doing something on my own and controlling my own destiny and taking maybe a bigger risk than other people are willing to take was always kind of something I was comfortable with. So yeah, maybe that's the answer to the question. Maybe it's always been there, a little spark at least.
It sounds like it has. I hear a lot of these stories that especially when you're a kid or whatever, and you just I don't know. I mean, I can certainly relate to it. Just like I remember literally like scheming, like how do I make money and what can I do, and like so it's kind of funny, And you kind of touched on how your father kind of had an impact, obviously, as I think most fathers and most parents would, for their children. But throughout your career, is there somebody that jumps out? And it could be whether it's on career or friend or family or something, or it could be in an event that really had a measurable impact. And I'm sure there's a lot, but is there one that stands out? Yeah.
Well, people-wise, there is a lot. I would say, obviously, my dad still is. My dad's pretty retired now, kicks around doing some stuff, but he's always been a big influence just from the perspective of values and work ethic and that type of thing. The president of the first software company I worked for, his name was Mac Purdy. He actually died recently. And he was a big influence in terms of, he's just one of the kindest people I knew. So one of the first people that in the business world I ran into that really set an example of treating others how you wanted to be treated, and you don't have to be, sharp elbows in every business interaction that you have, and respecting and loving your customers and appreciating them and team members. So he was a big one. And then, today the CEO of that same company, his name's Pete Kleifkin. We still hang out a lot. I consider him a mentor. Still bounce ideas off of him all the time. He's always been the person that set the best example of doing for one person what you wish you can do for a lot of people. So he always took the time to, invest in a few people individually. And I guess hopefully I picked up a little bit of that in terms of how I work with others on the team.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting when you were mentioning, just kind of like treating people the way you want to be treated, and that kind of, especially with business. You mentioned, not the sharp elbows. That's super difficult, especially when you get into, scaling a business, PE or bringing in VCs or anything. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do. So it sounds like you were pretty fortunate to be able to, have a mentor and work with somebody like that.
It's a balance for sure, and you said it well. It's definitely. I feel extremely fortunate to the people and even the private equity sponsors that we had then at some of the past companies, and the one that we have now, which is AKKR now, is our private equity sponsor. Just tremendous relationship, shares the same values, extremely helpful, and not overly involved in operating the business, but adding value every day. So, you hear a lot of stories that don't quite go that way when it comes to outside investment in businesses. And I've been fortunate enough to land in some pretty good situations.
Great. Well, so all right, let's kind of transition a little bit and talk about Caleres now. Kind of walk me through how, sort of your involvement, where, how that started. You mentioned that, kind of it's a new company, and it sounded like there's a lot of acquisitions kind of happening. What's the story there?
Yeah, so our heritage is a little unique in that. So I actually worked for our private equity company for about a year and a half while we built out this thesis of investing in supply chain execution software companies, with the intention of hopping back onto the operating side like I am now once we got it going. So in June of last year, in the middle of COVID, we were fortunate enough to acquire Pink. Pink stands for Positioning Inc. I think you knew Matt Yearling.
Yeah, he's been on the show before.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We still talk. And he's working on an exciting new venture now. But so Matt was instrumental in helping us make that acquisition. They were VC backed at the time. So they were our first kind of platform investment, and just tremendous company, fast growing, kind of not a lot of work to do in terms of value creation there, and instilling the kind of values that we'd want to see in a company. So great place to start. And then quickly after that, we carved out a piece of my former business to add to Pink, which does rail yard management and transportation management systems, software systems for industrial shippers. So, think about shippers that are trying to move goods from point A to point B. They're our ultimate customers, and 3PLs for that part of the business. That's also a fast growing part of the business. So we combine that. And then our third acquisition was a small company out of Dallas that does asset maintenance and repairs, particularly around rail cars. So a lot of these industrial shippers who leverage the railroad for a primary mode of transportation have their own rail car fleets. And this company provides kind of a closed loop maintenance process where you can do the billing and inspections and things like that for that. So, and that was kind of a product gap fill for that second business I described. And the founder of that business is still with us as well. So, really helpful in terms of growing out that maintenance and repair segment of what we do. So that's a little bit of the legacy. And that all happened from June to October of last year.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, we've been hard at work at integration and branding. We changed the name of the combined entity to Caleres, and we've started introducing that to our customers over the last few months. And now part of this conversation is introducing Caleres kind of to the market, the larger market. We've had a landing page, just as an example, for Caleres.com for quite some time. And just this week, we've rolled out the official new website that'll kind of sit over top of the original 3 websites. So things like that we've been working on, and obviously standing up the business, building the leadership team, new location here in Alpharetta, things like that.
That's fantastic. And obviously what an interesting time. You said, I think if I heard correctly, you said June of last year, so June of 2020. Obviously we were seeing, relative to supply chain, a lot of things going on. We're still seeing a lot of things going on. Was this something that was kind of in the works pre-COVID, or is it something that was a direct result because of COVID, or a mixture?
So again, timing was really, really beneficial. So we got to know Matt just before COVID. Actually, the last conference we went to was Modix here in town.
Yeah, we were there. We were all over that. The last trade show in the world.
Yeah, I think we were all deciding whether we should go or not. And I think about 50% of the people decided to go, and another 50% decided not to. Mm-hmm. So, that was the last trade show. We hadn't acquired the business then, but we'd certainly expressed interest by then. And then everything else was virtual from then on out. So we had the good fortune of getting to know them a little bit before COVID, when we were able to do that. And then we're able to complete the transaction ahead of time, or during COVID. Same for the other 2 businesses. We knew the folks there kind of from other folks in our past life, so to speak. So it wasn't a fresh start. So acquiring businesses or building partnerships during COVID has certainly changed. A little easier now than it was beforehand. A lot of assumptions that we had before in terms of this has to be face-to-face in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish is those norms have definitely been challenged. And I think we've all learned a lot.
So, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing in the industry right now?
So, other than the new dynamic based in just pure supply chain industry, the new dynamic of the importance of supply chain resiliency is one of the biggest things that we're seeing. Obviously, depending on the vertical, could see some significant impact based on COVID, whether it be positive or negative. So I think, looking back in hindsight in terms of everything that we learned during COVID, I think it's a brand new opportunity for both our customers and for us to think differently about how technology can help solve some of those problems. I think most of the conversations that we had during COVID and even today are around, what did we learn during COVID? What new challenges do we discover? How do we think about risk differently? To avoid some of the mistakes that we made and some of the good things that happened, frankly, for some customers in terms of outsized demand, things that they'd never seen before, and how to be able to flex their supply chain up and down. So I think that's a big challenge, just thinking about what's changed coming out of COVID. I think another challenge that we're seeing, not related to COVID, is I think our industry, so to speak, industrial shippers, people that are moving things around, and the carriers that serve them and the whole ecosystem around that, has done a really good job in investing in technology at the point solution level. I think technology has caught up, and there's enough offerings out there now where the market and customers are really thinking about how to connect all that data that's coming out of those respective point solutions, which there's really good ones out there. But it's solving individual challenges. So, given what we just talked about with coming out of COVID and what customers are thinking about differently today in terms of a total solution from a visibility all the way down to the execution level, I think it's a big challenge. Where are the black holes? Where's the missing data? And how do we connect all these legacy solutions that are out there now, and and add value to their respective businesses. So I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how are you guys, sort of positioned to solve some of these issues? Let's say, specific around like resiliency.
Our kind of investment thesis and how we're thinking about our company in general is that every move matters. It's kind of our rallying statement, our cause, if you will. And as we talk to customers at higher and higher levels within the enterprise, I think the solution and the story, the narrative that we can tell around solving specific challenges and across the whole supply chain is a really interesting one. I think it is, at least, and
oh yeah,
agree. Between the yard management portion, if you think about trailer yard management, which was the legacy Pink business, that team has just done a fantastic job of helping solve some of the biggest challenges there. Same on the rail yard management or the TMS system, which does a lot of billing, order management, work order creation, those types of things within those same shippers, and 4 3PLs that are serving those shippers. And then the asset repair stuff. I think you tie all those together at the data level and the analytics level. It's a really unique conversation that we can have in terms of illuminating those dark spots in the supply chain, really adding innovation to those points of the supply chain, which have historically been neglected, and frankly, accelerating their transformation. Most, in a lot of cases, believe it or not, Danny, are still, sticky notes and paper-based processes. So
I believe it. I've seen it.
I think we have a value there on some of those really vertically based complications that we still see in the supply chain today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting, especially now. Obviously everything, it's still, no one has a crystal ball in terms of like what's going to happen. Hopefully, as we're climbing out, but you keep reading stories and stuff about, as you mentioned, specifically about having, visibility across your supply chain and you're moving your raw goods from A to B. I was reading some stories around like Toyota and the automotive space. I mean, just the challenges of when you have so many different components coming in from all over, and if you don't have that kind of visibility to get an understanding of, that something maybe that ties into your ERP, so you say, man, we've got a problem in 4 weeks from now because we've got stuff stuck on a boat out in the port of Savannah or Charleston or whatever,
Or we can't get chips and.
Yep, chips is a big one.
Demand planning and all that stuff. I mean, that's part of the unique and a little bit what's changed in terms of that whole looking at, I've used the word the supply chain several times, but like you just mentioned, there's a whole bunch of what I would call individual custom supply chains, whether you're talking about automotive or energy or
exactly
food and beverage or whatever, they're all unique challenges. But if you roll it up to the highest level, it's that visibility so you can actually do something with the data and build software or technology around solving those challenges. But, the fun part is we're just getting to the point where you have enough data to start to solve some of those challenges. So I think we're positioned well to help with that kind of macro problem, but they are unique depending on the supply chain. The automotive one's a fascinating one to watch because it goes up and down so fast based on demand and the challenges that they face. They all seem to face the same thing at the same time. So it's just big swings in terms of positive or negative from a supply chain perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you guys got, just some great tools and some great solutions to be able to really just have that visibility. I think it's super exciting because I'm a little bit of a data dork to be able to, unlock potential and see things that you couldn't see before because they were in disparate systems or what have you. And so I think the future is bright and it's exciting to be able to unlock that, see the data, get the insights, and be able to make really informed decisions that otherwise you were, it's best guess.
Yeah. Or you just kind of had to duct tape and baling wire it together and do it manually and do your best at it. So yeah,
Exactly.
it makes it a really fun job around here in terms of customer conversations and thinking about what we can potentially do to help solve those problems. So yeah, it keeps everybody with a feeling of purpose around here.
Well, it sounds like you guys certainly have your work cut out for you. No lack of opportunity going forward, that's for sure. So, Kirk, I've really enjoyed our conversation, our time here. For those who'd like to get to know Caleres a little bit more, learn about some of your solutions, what you guys do, what's the best way of being able to do that?
Well, all of our stuff is on that new website that I mentioned, Caleres.com.
Great.
Yeah, we're happy to help. We pay pretty close attention to that, obviously, given the newness of it, and we'll try to be as responsive as we can. Also, all the traditional channels, LinkedIn, things like that, I'm certainly try to be active on and stay connected with the industry and with our customers. So I think those would be the two best ways.
Excellent. Well, Kirk, again, thank you so much for your time today and kind of sharing with us your story, Caleres, and what you guys are doing, and just some insights in what you're seeing in the industry. I know our audience will find it really valuable, and I've enjoyed it if nobody else does know, but I think a lot of people will. So.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed talking to you as well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being on. Okay, well, that wraps up today's Executive Series interview with Kirk Knopf, who is the CEO of Caleres. Some pretty awesome technology that's coming in to really solve the challenge of, well, a lot of different challenges, but looking at the resiliency in the supply chain and adding some more visibility so we can have some more data and insights about knowing where our stuff is, when it is, and we can do better planning and a lot more things beyond that. So go check them out. Go check them out at their website, Caleres.com. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you've not subscribed, listen, you need to go to industrialsage.com and go ahead and subscribe right there. Drop in your email address. We're going to send you these weekly episodes of all kinds of content and all kinds of great things that are going to be continuing to come through on 2021. So thanks so much if you are a subscriber or a listener. Hey, thanks so much. We'd love a review. Reach out to us. If there's anything you'd like us to cover, say, hey, listen, we'd love to do an episode on XYZ. Let us know, and we'll do it. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, goodbye, have a great day. Industrial Sage is an open platform where companies can showcase their expertise and solutions to a captive audience of industrial professionals. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, please leave us a review. Want us to tell your story? Go to industrialsage.com. This week's episode was produced by Rika Wiersma, filming by Donovan Jones, editing by Rika Wiersma, music composed by Oliver Michael, and executive producers Danny Gonzalez and David Karen. This is the Industrial Sage Executive Series.